Live from H-Town, it is Saturday night. Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. We had the schedule release. We had the debut of the rookies. I got a look at the rookies. We had a signing. We got a lot to get into. We got Mike Meltzer coming by. Let's get it. Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah. Top two and we not too plugged.
All right.
Daily digital on YouTube.
Lots to get into today. Best person to get into it with, Mike Meltzer. My gosh, my dad's favorite media type. I don't know what the deal is with that, but my dad's favorite media type, Mike Meltzer, attorney at law, host Mad Dog Radio, one of the prominent voices when it comes to talking Houston sports. He's going to join me in a second. If it is your first time, appreciate you for coming through. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. Subscribe, like. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. Talking Texans with Mike Meltzer. Meltzer, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you, Landry?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing very, very fantastic. I want to jump into the rookie stuff, but what do you know about the John McClain beef with Nick Caserio? Are you up to date on this? I know you're always busy during the week. Have you caught up on this?
I have not caught up on this. I saw some reference to this, but I don't know the details, to be honest with you.
So I'll give them to you because I'm actually really intrigued to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay.
And get in the comments if you are in here. This is an interactive show. We will get to your comments if they're topical. We'll get to them on the fly. If you are, if they're not topical, we'll mark them if they're interesting. Like someone's asking me about Montero. Thoughts on he sucks. Like what do you want me to say? Like what does that got to do with anything? I don't know why you're asking me about Montero. It sucks. Jeff Bagwell sucks as a GM. So there you go.
I have to admit, I want the Astros to do well, but there's a part of me, if you can kind of like, you know what I'm about to say, if you can kind of like isolate certain pain, there's a part of me that's like the person who always says, well, you got to play sports, know what you're talking about, or don't listen to someone who hasn't like played the game.
Yes.
Is taking a little bit of joy in the suffering of Abreu, Montero. No. It's like, yeah, okay.
No, because that's what Bagwell basically said. You know, I know baseball, and
yes,
that's what he said, and okay. But this was so. Here's the McClain Caserio thing. We'll get into this. We'll get into rookie minicamp and all that. So the Texans had rookie camp. Will Anderson spoke today, as did Juice Scruggs. No Tank Dell. No CJ Stroud, and John McClain is not happy about it. This was John McClain on the drive. Okay. You're already lighting up when you think about this. You're already laughing. But here was John McClain on the drive reacting to CJ Stroud not speaking today after rookie camp.
Break. There's one team that doesn't let the rookies talk at all at this time. And what team do y'all think that is?
Oh, I think I know. I know which one it is.
And who is left here from the Patriots that has had the Patriot way ingrained in him for 20 years? Yeah, this is not D'Amico. This is Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio has come up somehow with some cockamamie idea about why C.J. Stroud and Tank Dell should not be available. And you said the public may not care. I'll guarantee you they care. I'll guarantee you if you are a fan or you're a suite holder or you're a sponsor, Nick Caserio is thumbing his nose at you because you want to know what the quarterback thinks and the most popular player from the University of Houston thinks, but you won't get to find out. And that is all Nick Caserio, and it's preposterous. Other rookie quarterbacks get to talk. I'd love for Nick to address this to us and say, here's why I think these two guys shouldn't talk at the rookie minicamp. And if you're a fan, I think you'd really want to know what they think about their first experience with the Texans. So they say they're going to let us talk to them at OTAs. I'll be interesting to see if it's the first OTA. You know, since Bill O'Brien got here, and then Caserio and Jack Easterby, they want to neuter rookies. They want to cut their footballs off. And I've seen it happen to so many players. Fortunately, they couldn't do that to Dameon Pierce. He was just too good. And C.J. Stroud said all the right things when he talked to us after the draft. He said all the right things to us when he got here. He was funny. He made people laugh. He's been at Ohio State in the Big Ten. He comes from California. He knows how to talk. Now, Tank Dell is a great talker, as you guys know. I don't know if he's like Pierce. I don't think they could cut both footballs off, and he's not going to change. But I just think that is preposterous. Fans want to see the top players. They're fired up about it. And the way they're going to see it is by listening, reading, or watching, but they're not available, which is preposterous.
Yeah,
I suspect that this bothers you, John. I don't know. I don't know if I'm.
It bothers me because it's so unnecessary.
Yeah,
and it should bother you guys because wouldn't you like to know what Stroud thought about his first day? I would.
All right, there's a lot. There's a lot to get there. This is a topic right up your alley, though. That's why I started on this.
It's up my alley, yeah. So am I bothered by CJ Stroud and Tank Dell not speaking at minicamp, even though Will Anderson and Juice Scruggs can? Like, it's a little weird because it's like the first pick can't, and then the fourth pick that they had cannot, but the second and third picks can. Doesn't really seem to make sense.
Yeah.
Where I definitely agree with John is the part that he talked about Caserio and the rookies. Like, at the end of the day, all I'm about is winning games. And I have seen no proof, whether it's Bill O'Brien, Nick Caserio, or anybody else, that trying to limit the personalities of players has any effect on winning or losing football games. I have seen 0.0 evidence of that in my time in Houston.
Now, I agree with John. Like, my thing is this, and this is the problem that I have with it. I think Nick Caserio has at least earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to not just being married to the Patriot way. You know, like the last Burkhead doesn't help him, but I feel like the last 3 years have shown that he's just not married to the Patriot way.
Well, I would say, though, Landry, he's not married to the Patriot way in that he does things differently in terms of his actions. But with the media stuff, maybe there could be a carryover just in that particular way. Does that make sense? Because Caserio drafts very differently than Bill Belichick does, and he trades very differently, and he allocates resources. But on the media stuff, he could have some similarities in that one specific area.
Yeah, I just don't. I could see this being something that D'Amico and Caserio agree on. And I was talking to another media guy about this, and they said, you know, they kind of feel that it's a little bit weird because, oh hell, I'll just say it. I was talking to Brooks Cabina about it. And his thing is, I'm writing a feature for the Chronicle tomorrow, and they're sending me Juice Scruggs. Like,
yeah,
what are we doing? So
yes.
He had a little bit to work with, but they're sending me Juice Scruggs. So I can understand that. I just think that this has to be something that D'Amico signed off on too. So saying it's just a Caserio thing, I think is a little bit unfair. Now,
yeah, I would wonder in that dynamic, like who is really in charge of the media strategy portion of it, because I don't know D'Amico Ryans well enough, but I could envision a situation where if Caserio wants to like have some suggestions like, hey, don't have the rookie number 2 pick overall talk to the media at rookie minicamp, could I see a situation where D'Amico's like, okay, yeah, that sounds reasonable to me, maybe. I don't know how much D'Amico cares about this sort of thing. I don't know yet.
Yeah, and I do agree with McLean, and he asked the question that I always ask with, it's like, what's the payoff? Like, regardless, like, what's the payoff of sending Will Anderson up there but not sending CJ? Because if anything for me, and I don't agree with McClain that it's that big of a deal, but like if we're like looking at it and we're like expanding the conversation, I mean, maybe this could add to the thought that they liked Will Anderson more, because you're sitting you trust him to go up there and represent everyone, but you don't trust your quarterback to go up there.
That's an interesting one. Do they not trust Stroud from a personality standpoint? You know what's weird? I mean,
He's
CJ
awesome.
Stroud.
He's awesome.
CJ Stroud has been in the spotlight as Ohio State's quarterback the last 2 years, and I feel like despite that, I've heard more about his personality in the last 4 weeks than I have the last 2 entire college football seasons. Like I didn't hear anything about CJ Stroud as far as his personality when he was a starting quarterback at OSU for 2 years. And the last month, I've heard way more about it. It's very odd to me.
Now, Bevo McSlapnut says, is it Nick's job to worry about what a journalist needs to write? Not really, but I think it's more so just about what the fans want to hear. Like, tell me on the comments, what was your favorite? What did you want to hear from Juice Scruggs today? Like, what were you wanting? What were you dying to hear from Juice? And he was cool. I mean, he was
a center talking about a rookie mini camp when there are no pads. I don't know who he's even going against.
I don't know. Interesting. But there's also a group of people that are going to defend whatever. So we'll see what happens with all that. I think it's interesting. We're going to hear from CJ Stroud a lot.
I do agree with you. If you're asking me in a vacuum, do I care that CJ Stroud didn't talk after a rookie minicamp, even though I guess he will at the OTAs? It doesn't really bother me this particular weekend.
No,
but I
wasn't fired up about it, and I'm
also not like in it completely day to day like John would be, or certainly Brooks Cabina. So I can see it from their standpoint. It's a little bit different.
I just don't think the Patriot way thing is the fair thing to say at this point with Nick. I don't think he's like some sort of blowhard weirdo, no numbers on the roster type of guy, although they did do that.
Weren't they doing some of this last year where, not that they had so many big name players in the team, but like, wasn't there a thing, Landry, last year in the summer training camp, there was some chatter about like they kept sending out just a bunch of randoms to the podium? Did that happen? Or I feel like I'm not making that up. I feel like I talked to somebody about who they were making available.
2 years ago. That was 2 years ago.
Okay. I thought there was something last year, but
yeah, last year was a little bit, but yeah, that was 2 years ago where it was just really strange. They do it sometimes. Sometimes they do it, but hasn't been as bad. The other thing is the Patriots don't even open rookie minicamp.
Okay.
So the media is not even at rookie minicamp for the Patriots.
So you can't make an apples to apples comparison here.
Yeah, they're not even there. It's not even open. So
I'm looking forward to when we get the next Davis Mills media availability. This is the kind of stuff that I am intrigued by.
Let me tell you this. It's going to sound exactly like it did last year. It
Okay.
will be very robotic.
Yes.
I said this when the schedule came out, and I haven't talked to you about the schedule. I think the schedule's perfect. I understand some people would like primetime games, but not having the primetime games, I think, can be motivating, and they can use it as motivation. But when you're rotating the first 10 games, road home, road home, road home, road home, road home, you only have back-to-back road games once. You have 3 straight home games in November. I think the layout of this schedule from a competitive standpoint and from a perspective of if I'm a head coach of an NFL team, from D'Amico Ryan's standpoint, with a young squad, with the squad you don't have much experience with, noon games in all but 2, and it could end up being all but 1, depending on what happens with Indianapolis. I think this schedule is absolutely perfect. Do you agree or disagree?
I don't think it's perfect for 2 specific reasons. I'd like the bye week a little bit later to have more game, to basically have sort of an equal distribution of games on either side of it. I don't love opening in Baltimore. I think that is an incredibly difficult spot. They are going to be the biggest underdog in the league in week 1. It's only one game, but I would have liked to have seen that be, maybe a home opener against a team that is a little bit easier to beat. Like I tweeted this at you. I've seen this Baltimore game like 25 times. I know what this is going to be. This is going to be, a young offense against a veteran defense. They'll put together like 2 drives, kick a field goal, maybe score a touchdown. Lamar will hit like, Odell Beckham on some annoying long play late in the game, and Baltimore will win the game like 28-10. That's what that game is going to be. So I don't love the opener. I don't love the placement of the bye. Otherwise, everything what you said is very fair.
Appreciate everyone for coming through. Subscribe, like, Locker Room, #1 source for Texans daily digital content. Mike Meltzer in the building. Here's my thing though, and this is the case I'm going to make. And I hate when radio hosts say this. I think it's absolute hack crap, and sometimes it just leads to like just saying something just to say it. Allow me to play devil's advocate on the Baltimore thing though.
Yep.
Could you make a case? I don't think there's a right time to play Baltimore.
There is
Maybe
not.
Christmas
Correct.
Eve. Like if you could play, Lopez and I did a wife swap during the show where if you could switch one game, what would you switch? I would take Cleveland week 1 and Baltimore on Christmas Eve because maybe you catch them slipping a little bit. Just because it's kind of like the Christmas Eve and the distraction. So that was my wife swap where you can swap one game.
Yes.
As far as the Baltimore thing goes, and I know they're going to be the health of Lamar Jackson seems to be like the #1 thing that you hear when people talk about getting them at the wrong time. But it's a new offensive system, new receivers, and your defense is going to be fresh too. And keep in mind, anyone who's coming in here who's not a Texans fan, no team in the world is looking at the Texans on their schedule and saying anything other than win. So
yes.
This is just about the opponent. Okay. I understand. Like when I say not on the same page, it's the same thing with CJ Stroud and his guys, but I'm just looking at the opponent here. So I completely understand that in Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Tennessee, Cincinnati, everywhere, they're looking at their schedule saying that's a W right there against the Texans. So I get that. Yep. But the fact that it is a new system, the fact that Lamar Jackson's used to an offense that was basically molded around him, the fact that he has new receivers, the fact that it's probably a small story, but Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't there today for their voluntary whatever football school or whatever. Could you make a case? Because sometimes we do see guys in new systems, it takes them a little bit longer to gel. Is it possible that maybe you can make a case that based on that you might be getting Baltimore at the right time?
Yeah, that would be the argument that they've got a new system. Todd Bunkin's the OC, and you're going to be debuting new receivers, Odell, Zay Flowers, their first-round pick. Maybe their running backs are healthier this season. So I think there's a case to be made. Because it was going to be Baltimore on the road anyway, then yes, there was not a great place in the schedule to place Baltimore because it's probably going to be a loss. I was just thinking from the standpoint of you'd love to have a rookie quarterback who's going to have a bunch of questions about him, have a bit of a softer landing than on the road against that defense. That was my only comment. Like, yeah, this game was going to be a loss, most likely. I don't care if you played it, in tomorrow or played it on January 7th. This game is probably going to be a loss.
So there's another theory I have on the schedule, and we'll get through everything else. I think Baltimore is flirting with playing with fire. And Jacksonville, excuse me. I think the Jags are playing with fire. 2 weeks in London, week 4 and 5, just doesn't seem like something that is like ideal for an NFL team. I don't know what the effect is. I just, from my perspective, you go on a long-ass vacation, you get on a 10-hour plane flight. I'm assuming they're going to have all these other obligations going on where they're having to do extra stuff. I'm assuming that, you're not sleeping in your own bed, and then you're staying there for 2 weeks, and then you have to get on a plane and you're playing again. I feel like this could be bad for the Jags. I just don't see how this is normal.
It's weird to me, and I heard you guys discuss this on In the Loop this week, that there's no bye week on. Well, there wasn't going to be a bye week before, but there's not a bye week
for sure for them.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I guess if you're Jacksonville, you can rationalize it by saying they really should start 2-1. If you figure wins at Indy and against the Texans in week 3, let's say you lose to KC in week 2, they should be 2-1 going in. So they should have some margin for error. Atlanta Buffalo feels like 1-1, maybe a chance at 2-0. And then you would justify by saying, then you come back and you face what should be a lousy Indianapolis team in week 6. But you're right that's, they're going to be there for a while, no bye week on either end, and they still got to get through not just 1, but 3 more games, including, here's the other part. I don't know if you guys got into this, but think about this. Atlanta, Buffalo in London. They fly back and you play a home game against Indy. Then short week, Landry. Short week, you go to New Orleans, so not a long flight, but that's a short week. And then you're at Pittsburgh, another road game, even with the mini bye, and then you get the bye week after that. So they could be really kind of straggling heading into that bye before they play San Francisco on November 12th.
And
it's
here's
a fair
the
theory.
Thing. Here's the thing. Sometimes when a schedule's laid out, you say, well, that's effed up. You got the Chiefs playing, Monday night, and then they're playing Sunday, and then you got them Thursday and all that. You say that. The Jags and the London relationship is their own thing. The NFL shouldn't adjust the way that they're trying to do stuff because the Jags are so obsessed with, expanding in London and doing that. So I guess I should have thought about that before I thought, the NFL is going to give them a bye week 6, because the NFL has no problem with stuff going on in London. But if you actually, I watched a Jags seminar 3 years ago. It was when Coughlin was still there, and they had
seminar.
Yeah, they had a Jags season ticket seminar. I might be using the wrong term, the wrong presentation term, but they were talking about how they wanted to expand in London and talking about the stadium and stuff. So I guess since it's kind of the Jags' own doing, the NFL is just not really looking to accommodate the potential problems they could have. Are there any other schedule thoughts you have?
Good question. Are there any other schedule thoughts I had?
Cincinnati, by the way, I think you get a break with Cincinnati.
How so?
You get them the week after they play Buffalo.
Okay, I can see that.
I think you get a little bit of a break there.
My general take on this, and this has been only more so the case the last couple of years, Landry, I think there's a big difference in terms of a team's national perception if they struggle in the noon Central Time window on a Sunday versus being open in front of the nation on a Sunday night, on a Monday night. This is the kind of thing that the Lions will deal with this season. The Jets are going to deal with this season. If you struggle or weird things happen in the early window on Sunday, you can be buried by the avalanche of games. That's when, if you're going to struggle, you want to struggle at noon Central Time until 3 on a Sunday. You don't want to struggle on Sunday Night Football or Monday night where the world is watching. Those kind of things, it sounds funny, but that could be the difference between a coach being fired or not. Not that applies here, but you get the idea. So I like having this many noon Central Time games, be buried. You'll be like the people who watch a million games. You'll be game number 6 or 7 in the red zone window, and you can kind of quietly go about your business. I love quietly going about my business. My worst nightmare is high expectations on national television falling apart, a la the Letterman jacket game. That is my worst nightmare.
What do you think about the notion that there's some sort of disrespect for the Texans not getting a primetime game?
I mean, it depends on how you define the definition of disrespect, but yeah, people don't think they're going to be good because they haven't been good for 3 years. So whatever you want to consider that, yes, the people who are making the schedules and the people at CBS, Fox, ESPN, and Amazon don't really want the Texans on their prime time or, big afternoon windows, and I cannot blame them for that. I think the most that you were hoping for this year would have been what's the most you could have expected, Landry, realistically with this team? The most,
hope 2.
Yeah, hope. Hope. Yeah, I would say a Thursday game, basically. And
I don't know. I feel like Thursday games are a big deal now. I feel like they're trying to make up to Amazon.
They are.
Now.
Yeah. I mean, but that goes.
We're not going to treat you like NFL Network anymore.
But Landry, think about it. To your original point about the schedule, you look at it. There's no game that they have on Thursday. That has to be considered a positive.
No, I agree. From a competitive standpoint, I agree.
Yes, that
I don't know
to
how
your
many
point about
coaches
perfect
are
schedule
dying to play on Thursday night. When people say when you say prime time.
Yes.
I feel like fans have this notion that, prime time is, late night. And the definition of it is the definition of prime time, there's a definition. I remember I heard some host saying, well, this is considered a prime time. No, prime time is there's a time. It's at night. It's not, you think this is a big game or that's a big game. Primetime is clear. I don't know how many coaches are like honored that they're playing on Thursday night compared to like Monday or Sunday night. Like Thursday night games are looked at as inconveniences. Like from a competitive standpoint, like they are the ultimate inconvenience. So the fact that Texans aren't getting thrown on Thursday night, I don't think D'Amico Ryans is too hurt by that.
I was a little surprised they weren't. To me, the ideal Thursday night kind of matchup with them would have been the Houston-Carolina game. And I don't know how that would have fit, obviously, in the gigantic matrix of schedules that the computer spits out and they look at. But that would have been the number one overall pick versus number 2. That, to me, would have been a decent selling point.
Yeah, and
nationally,
that was the only like real appealing one, unless they wanted to put Deshaun in the Texans. I don't think they want to do that. And quite frankly, I think Christmas might be a good time to bury that. Although I thought opening week would have been. That's the one that I wanted to see, that one for opening week. I also think that you get the Titans at an interesting time. You get them late in the season. I guess if we're to subscribe to the theory that 1, Will Levis sucks, and 2, that Derrick Henry eventually is going to wear down, getting the Titans late in the season, if we're just talking about being competitive, is pretty favorable. The same reason that a lot of people would have wanted Lamar Jackson later on in the season.
Yes, this is one I like. Usually I don't like. The Texans have had this a few times in the last 10 years with Indy, where they'll face them like twice super late in the season. This actually happened in Andrew Luck's rookie season, where my thought was like, hey, you would have liked to have gotten them early once and not just, twice basically in 3 weeks at the end of 2012. Anyway, looking at this, first of all, Tennessee, you want to talk about a fan base that seems like it is down in the dumps. They hate, usually almost every draft, Landry, you go around to these other 31 cities and people, or 30 cities, they like their draft because there's the natural like hope and optimism when the picks are made. That is not the case in Tennessee, because there are a lot of SEC fans there and they don't like Will Levis. They like Hendon Hooker more than they like Will Levis. They don't like Will Levis. Rand Carthon apparently was a disaster at one of the press conferences, like immediately after the draft. It didn't go well for them. It feels like the organization and the roster are in a weird place. And Will Levis is 24 before the season begins. I feel like they have to find out about Will Levis by the end of 2023. They have to have more information on him then than they have now.
Do they?
Yes, absolutely. Heading into the 2024 draft, they need to know. I mean, they'll know more about Levis, like practicing, what he's like as a guy, work habits. But I mean, they need to have some regular season data on this guy.
No, here's the thing, though. Like, would it shock you if Ryan Tannehill comes in and the Titans are atop the AFC South in November? That's the thing. Like, you say they need to, but would it 100% shock you if Ryan Tannehill's healthy, if the Tennessee Titans are at the top of the AFC South in like mid-November?
I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be a little surprised.
And that's why they're in a weird spot, because when I talk crap about the Titans, there's like a notion that I'm saying they're going to suck and they're going to win 2 games. No, the problem is that they're going to be so like okay that there's the ceiling's low, but the floor is high, and sometimes that's not ideal. It would not shock me if November 15th, November 20th, whatever comes around, and the Tennessee Titans are in first place in the AFC South. We'd be talking about the division champs if Tannehill doesn't get hurt. Yes. So when you say they need to figure out what's going on with Will Levis, at what extreme do you start him immediately? Because if you don't, then there's a chance you're never going to see him at all this year.
I just think with Tannehill, no matter how well the season goes, there's going to be a ceiling, especially Landry, when you think about that team compared to all the teams with really good quarterbacks in the AFC. And if we know that, they know that. So I think at some point before next year's draft, yes, they're going to need to find out something about Will Levis. Not starting him week 1. I wouldn't be that aggressive with it. But I just think when you look at how good this conference is, I don't think they're going to have the kind of season to where Tannehill just unquestionably starts 17 regular season games. That would surprise me.
Well,
that would surprise me.
I just think you're committed to Will Levis at this point, to where, unless you just have an awful season and you're drafting atop the draft, and let's say you're like have a chance to get Drake May or and like Ish hits the fan and you have that opportunity, I'm not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, but it might be like an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation where this guy holds it down better than you expected. Alex Smith, you get to the playoffs. Maybe you win a playoff game. Maybe Will Levis starts a game, and then you're just committed to him no matter what the next year. And I know that sounds silly, and maybe they figure something else out. I just don't like, of all the wild ass stuff that could happen in this division, there's really a lot. Like, you could tell me that the Indianapolis Colts are able to grind out the division with Anthony Richardson. I don't think a lot of Anthony Richardson. You could tell me that Gardner Minshew starts and holds it down too. Like, you could, because the Indianapolis Colts, like the Tennessee Titans, would have won the division last year had Ryan Tannehill not gotten hurt. The Indianapolis Colts, say what you want about them, but that's not a normal team that drafts in the top 5. They had arguably like one of the 3 best defensive players in the division out for the majority of last year in Shaq Leonard, excuse me. They had one of the best running backs in the NFL out in Jonathan Taylor, and they just had the most pathetic quarterback play that you've ever seen. And the coaching, I think Frank Reich was just burned out. Frank Reich was just burned out from dealing with Irsay and hearing about the Carson Wentz thing every 5 seconds. So you could tell me that the Colts scratch and claw their way and that Tennessee scratches and claws their way, or you could tell me that Jacksonville's at the top too, and it wouldn't shock me. I just don't. The Tennessee thing, I just can't look at that and say they have to figure out about Will Levis. If they would have drafted him early, maybe, but at this point, I don't know. I don't know that they took him in the second round saying I have to figure out to him. Maybe it's a commitment past this year, but I don't think they're like desperate to figure out.
Yeah, I guess you could spin it as the team's floor is high enough to where it would be surprising if they were drafting in the Caleb Williams, Drake May scenario, or at that level. I just think from his age, I just want to know if I'm 24? Tennessee. Yeah, 24, and also looking at his football resume, the Penn State transfer, really good in 2021, not so good in 2022. I'd want to know what version I'm getting, because if you compare it, I'm not saying it's an equivalent, but I have to imagine, Landry, that part of them moving on from Malik Willis, whenever they do that officially, is because of the way that he looked in the games that he played. And I know they're not.
But he would have never played. He would have never played.
Yeah, he would have never played. But I think the fact that he did and he looked that way had some calculus into them deciding to draft Will Levis. I compared this when I was on Mad Dog last week, or 2 weeks ago. Here's how I did a cowherd kind of analogy, which I rarely do. I compared Tennessee's choices at quarterback to kind of like if you walk into a store and you go on Amazon, this is especially true with Amazon, and you'll look at it and you'll say, I don't know that I was shopping for like a kitchen cutlery set, but man, this thing is 75% off. That looks like a deal that could be too good to pass up. That's what I think about Tennessee at quarterback. They're sitting there, Landry, last year, and like they're not really in the quarterback business, but they're like, oh, well, Malik Willis has fallen like 2 rounds. Let's move up in the 3rd round. And then this year, all right, we're not necessarily, well, maybe we were interested in CJ Stroud. The Texans got him. Man, Will Levis is sitting there. We can trade up for him. Like, this thing's on sale. It's like 70% off. Let's give it a shot. And you end up with a bunch of stuff in your house that you don't want, that you never wanted.
And it's like for me, it would be like for me, like I talk crap about a lot of food and I say it's not worth the price that it is. It's not, it doesn't belong on the menu there. Like I was talking crap about pork tenderloin the other day. It's fine, but I would rather have chicken or steak. Like pork tenderloin being up there the same price as steak doesn't make sense.
I get it.
Because chicken's cheaper and steak is about the same price. So I would rather have the pork tenderloin. I don't like scallops. I'm not big on scallops. I'd rather have shrimp. I would rather have actual fish, etc. Yes. And I think scallops like aren't worth the price. And I'm not a big lobster guy either. I'm going with the steak. But if I go to a restaurant and the lobster is, in the same range as the chicken, then I might go with it. You're exactly right. It's the exact same analogy. They didn't think Will Levis was worth the 11th pick.
Correct.
But he was there and they just had to do it.
And they just had to do it. Now we see how it works out for them. They're in a weird organizational situation. They're in one of the weirdest spots, I think, of any team in the league.
Yeah, because they're having to convince themselves now that they like this guy. and obviously you didn't like him that much because the
Yes.
the other thing that you're saying, like part of the reason that you're saying, I think I'm not trying to speak for you, but part of the reason you're saying they have to see what happens with Will Levis is because Ryan Tannehill is going to be gone after this year, and quarterback's going to be you're probably not going to commit too much to Ryan Tannehill. They knew that when they were drafting at 11. I mean, they know who Will Levis is. They knew that. They didn't do it.
The real conspiracy people would say, take a look at what Ryan Day this year does at Ohio State. And I want to make it clear, I think Ryan Day is a very good head coach. But people will make the link and say, hey, if things go poorly for Ryan Day, if he loses to Michigan again for 3 straight years, Mike Vrabel's from there. Vrabel might be sick of this, this low ceiling in Tennessee. Could that be something that happens? I have seen that discussed on various message boards that I visit.
You go
Just
on
throwing it out there,
but we've already established that you go on too many message boards. So yeah, there is that. Let's get to a couple of the comments here. Logan Taylor asking, do you think Shaquille Griffin starts over Steven Nelson? Interesting question. And the Texans did sign Shaq Griffin. The Starbucks baby had the report first. Jordan Schultz.
I like this signing, by the way.
I think it's an excellent signing. Tell the people why you think that this is an excellent signing.
Because he was good in Seattle, didn't work out as a free agent with Jacksonville, but that can happen. I think at this age, he's going to be 28 basically in like 2 months because he's been good before in Seattle and it didn't work out somewhere else. I like betting on talent, especially because you're not necessarily relying on him as a starter. If he was worth $40 million 2 years ago, the talent's still there. I like this kind of low risk move.
Yeah, I like it too because I like churning the roster with purpose. And
yes,
you can't do that with the cap situation they had last year. It's not as likely. And as good as Steven Nelson was last year, I don't think it's enough to just ignore the cornerback position. You didn't draft a corner, and you bring in a guy who's 3 years younger than Steven Nelson. You bring in a guy who was a Pro Bowler 3 years ago. He went to Jacksonville. Urban Meyer was there. It was a disaster. He was one of the most coveted guys on the market a couple of years ago, had a back injury, and maybe it lights a fire under Steven Nelson, or maybe you get some better quality play. And if it doesn't work out, then you're not any worse off because of it, but there's a chance that you're better. I'm not going to sit here and say you got like your starting cornerbacks for the next 5 years, but I was kind of amused. And I think it was just Aaron Wilson who said it, talking about like a Steven Nelson extension.
Oh God.
But I as much as I liked what Steven Nelson did last year, I think if you're an organization that's trying to get better or you're a good organization, I think you can do as good or better than that each year, because you found him off the streets and you got that from him. So why not bring in someone that probably has a little bit more upside and see what happens? I mean, I like this. I like this big time.
Yes, you should be looking for pickups like Steven Nelson every single year if you're a viable NFL franchise. And you think about the depth behind Derek Stingley and Steven Nelson. I mean, who is it? It's, other than it's basically what Tavier Thomas, Darius Phillips, Kendall Sheffield, Kadar Hallman. I mean, there's not a whole lot there. This makes me feel better. And now the secondary is actually one of those areas to where it's going to have various question marks. But if the question marks are answered mostly in the right way, Landry, they could have a decent secondary. If the questions are answered the right way, the questions being Stingley, health and performance, Petrie jump to year 2, Ward seamlessly transitions in, can they get something out of Nelson and Griffin? Nelson like he played last year, Griffin a couple of years ago. That has the makings of a viable NFL secondary.
Well, and I think the most important thing is you have 2 guys on there with extremely high ceilings, like Pro Bowl caliber ceilings.
Yeah.
That you don't know what's going to happen. Robert K, shout out to everyone in the comments. He says at some point you can't just keep perpetually churning the roster anymore. We've been replacing starters for 3 years now. At some point you got to find a core that includes veterans and maintain. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't
agree with that either.
I think Kansas City does it. I think most of the good teams churn the roster on the reg. Like you find your core guys, like in the Texans situation, you would hope.
You got to find them You find them in the draft, Landry. You have to find them in the draft,
but
most likely.
Your core guys right now are Stingley and Petrie. You're hoping, and then it's not like you're going to find a corner and pay a corner and have him here for 3 years. Like Kansas City, like that's Kansas City loses offensive linemen every year, and they have to figure it out. So I disagree with Robert. Appreciate the comment, but I don't agree with that at all, even a little bit.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Churning the roster is exactly what I would do. Yeah, you have to do it. And with it, I mean, listen, you can add some of your core.
Like the last 2 years are not the norm.
It's not the norm. No, it's such a volume of transactions,
etc. It's not the norm.
Yeah, you're going to build the core of this team through mostly draft, maybe a little bit free agency, and maybe a little bit trade, but it's going to be mostly from the draft. But this stuff right here, like you need some help at corner, especially as depth. That's the part of the roster you churn a year.
Shaq Mason gets an extension.
Yes.
I want to trust their evaluation, but they don't have like the greatest track record of evaluating interior offensive linemen. And that's my problem with, and I also have some PTSD from heavy investments in the offensive line that maybe has nothing to do with Nick Caserio, Scout Goodhair, and the current regime. But I have PTSD in investing a lot in the offensive line and not seeing the benefits of said investments and taking out that portion of the pie when it comes to the salary cap. So I want to say Shaq Mason is going to be a really, really solid guard. He's going to be paid. I think he's the top 11 in average per year salary, but I don't know. So I don't know what to say. I mean, he's never been in this system. He was basically in the wishbone at Georgia Tech. Then he was in New England, then he was in Tampa Bay, and now he's here. So if they know what they're doing, then cool. And you can afford to invest heavily when you have a quarterback on his rookie deal and you have all these rookies and these young guys still on rookie contracts. But I have a healthy amount of skepticism in the way in which interior offensive linemen, from watching Justin Britt play and bringing him back for a year, to having Questenberry in position to back him up, to drafting Kenyon Green in the first round, to AJ Cann, to where I don't have like full trust in their evaluation of interior offensive linemen. Is that fair?
I'm with you. It's totally fair. I'm in this weird spot where I simultaneously think that they needed to add somebody like Shaq Mason at one of the guard spots because of the question marks of Kenyon Green and just needing to have a better line in front of a rookie quarterback. So I like the trade for Shaq Mason because it was aggressive, and yet at the same exact time,
I had no problem with that either.
I look at the deal, and it feels to me like one of those deals that I could see not looking so good in about a year or really 2 years. And I hope that's not the case. I like the addition of the player. I like the trade. I'm not sure about the contract. That's where I'm at with it. And I think you can have those opinions at the same time. I'm not quite sold on the contract. We haven't seen
the player. And I mean, the player was going to get cut.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, that does not,
different situation. I know.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that he is not a good player, but when you do this, when you trade for him and then give him a contract like this, he has to be good, because that's the bet that you're making on the player. He has to be good. Yeah, this cannot be another Brandon Cooks extension situation. You got to hit on some of these moves.
Usually, when you're keeping like a real close eye on guard play to evaluate a front office, it's basketball, but in this instance, you trade for a guy, you make him one of the higher paid guards in the league, and then you use a first round pick on a guard, and he has one of the most disappointing rookie seasons that we've seen. Going to be keeping a close eye on those guards, man. Keeping a close eye on those guards. I want to get your take on this.
They need better line play. For the love of God, they need better line play.
Truth. So Will Anderson, I was at rookie camp today. I asked Will Anderson. There were a lot of questions going around. I just decided to ask him about his jersey number. And there's a video out. Y'all can go back and look at that one. I asked him why he decided on 51. And Will Anderson said, because they gave me 51 just like they gave me 31 at Alabama, and they basically told me to make something of it. This guy's different, man. And I don't know whether I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but to be a 5-star recruit and go to Alabama and them just throw 31 at you, and you did make it a thing, and then you're the number 3 pick in the draft, and you just let them hand you 51. I would not do that. I would be a little bit more picky about my jersey number, but I am not the man that Will Anderson is. That is a swell young man, that Will Anderson guy.
So he just got 51. Was there any negotiation with Damian Pierce, or he just got it and he was fine with 51?
Got it.
Okay.
Just said, we'll see what happens. We'll see if it sticks, but he just got it and he was cool.
I'm always the worst person to ask about this because, as you know, as Seth well knows, I'm horrible when it comes to athletes and jersey numbers. Like I genuinely forget which number they wear. For some reason, my brain, which functions properly in other areas, just doesn't like make the connection. For whatever reason, but do you feel like Landry 51 is a more natural pass rusher number than 31 is?
It's got to be in the high 50s, bro.
In the high 50s.
It's got to be in the high 50s.
Who are the famous 51s in NFL history?
Jake Buckets.
So inside linebacker.
He couldn't play today. Lopez and me.
Yeah, that's sad.
Couldn't play today.
Depressing.
Couldn't play.
Yeah, so Randy Cross, Takeo Spikes.
Ken Norton Jr.
Yeah, that's a good one. James Farrier, Sam Mills,
Kamu Hill,
Brian Cox.
Man,
it's an inside linebacker number. Gerard Mayo.
Maybe that's why they gave it to him. They respected him. You remind me of Mayo.
Yeah, Mike Pouncey. Bruce Irvin. Yeah, he wore 51. Okay, so there's an edge guy.
59's Kenyon Green.
Interesting.
Yeah, Kenyon Green's 59.
I'm just Lofa Tupu, and there's a blast from the past. Ben Lieber. Yeah, a lot of inside linebacker types and some centers that are in this mix.
So other takeaways from rookie camp. Tank Dell's small, man. I know.
Yeah.
I already knew this.
Yes.
But he is really small.
Well, I mean, he's a 3rd-round pick, and he was very productive, and he's fast.
He was taking over Jalen Hyatt. I'm fine with it. I'm just saying,
man,
he's little.
Yeah, he's little. Yes.
He's a real small dude. Juice Scruggs seems like a pro. They sent him to the podium. They didn't send CJ, but they sent Juice Scruggs to the podium. Seems like a pro. That's another thing. I want to get your take on the Juice Scruggs thing.
Yeah.
Is that another one that has to hit? Like, are we looking at the entire?
Well,
I think between him and Patterson, one of those has to hit.
Absolutely. You stole the thought out of my head. Because Nick Caserio, and I tweeted about this a week into free agency. What is his plan at center? Well, the plan is clearly, as we find out, to use a low 2nd, high 3rd-round pick, trade up for Juice Scruggs. I actually think it's kind of an inspired move to then take Patterson, a guy who played a bunch at Notre Dame, in the 6th round to kind of give you like a little backstop there. But yes.
No, for sure. I liked it too.
Because of how important it is to any quarterback, but especially a rookie quarterback, and how much of a gaping hole this was on the offensive line the last 2 years. Thank you, Justin Britt. This needs to hit. One of these players needs to hit. And if it's the 6th rounder over the 2nd, you can live with that because, sometimes it just kind of works out that way. Kirk Cousins, RG3, I suppose. But yes, you are right. Because this is the way that Nick Caserio attacked center, which was his most obvious weakness on the offensive line heading out of 2022, one of these guys has to hit and be viable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a must. If you trade up in that situation, it's a must. But again, if you're asking me the weakness of the evaluation process so far, like the interior offensive line has to be it.
I like having a good center. It's like having a good catcher.
Who doesn't like having a good center?
It's like having a warm blanket at night. It makes you feel good to have. Like I grew up from a Jet standpoint. They had Kevin Mawai. They had Mangold. So I had like 13 years of not worrying about one position. It's a nice feeling, Landry.
No, it's good.
I miss Chris Myers. I really miss Chris Myers.
Mark Stepnoski back in the day. Stepnoski with the Cowboys back in the day. The small dude. Yeah, I mean you thought Nick Martin was going to be that guy.
I did. I'm still bitter about him for not being that guy. Dude, if I ran into Bill O'Brien and I had a beer with him and we talked for like an hour, one of the things I would bring up is Nick Martin. It wouldn't be the first thing, but it would be brought up at some point.
What would you say?
I would ask two questions. One, like, did they think about him what I thought about him coming out of Notre Dame? And two,
they thought about him when he wasn't him.
Why did Bill
him like the 5th highest paid center in the NFL when he sucked?
Yes. Why did Bill make it such a big public display that like he stole that Nick Martin basically went to NRG and stole weight room equipment to bring to his house? Yeah, the blocking sled. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, he talked about it like it was like God's gift to everything.
The guy stole equipment. What am I giving him credit for that? Nonsense.
Nick Martin. Absolute trash that was. That was
terrible.
Awful. Nick Martin was awful.
That was very disappointing.
I've had beers with O'Brien. Someone says
I know.
O'Brien drinks Bud Light. I don't know what it was. And like it was actually pretty cool because if y'all have heard me talk about Bill O'Brien, I talk pretty bad about O'Brien, but he's like you just talk to him about ball and like talk to him about what you think and stuff like that. He's a pretty cool ass dude. I don't remember.
Yeah,
what beer he ordered. I think we were craft beering because he stayed after and we had a few for like 15 minutes. We had like 2 beers, just us at the end. He was talking about the George O'Leary stuff and all that. It was like during the Hopkins trade. I don't know that he drinks Bud Light though.
I don't like Bill O'Brien. I don't love Bill O'Brien, the coach. I despise Bill O'Brien, the GM. But the actual person, I think I could hang out with Bill for a little bit.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and Bill O'Brien, man, you want to talk about smart? They always say, you don't want to be the one that follows Nick Saban at Alabama. You don't want to be the one that follows, Darryl Royal at Texas. Or,
yes. Well, he did, and he did.
Well, now he's following Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, an offensive coordinator, and they think he's a god in New England right now.
Well, I was thinking about
him like he's Bill Walsh.
It's funny, yeah. But he did follow Paterno at Penn State, and I still think did a very good job those 2 years. But yeah, you're right. It's funny.
That was a good time to follow Paterno, though, if we're being honest.
Yeah, that's a weird
analogy. Did you forget that something happened to Joe Paterno?
No, I didn't forget. It's later in the day. I've had a long day, not really even doing anything.
Follow Joe Pa, sir.
He did follow someone who was a legend, although at that point very tarnished.
Yeah, I would say
very tarnished.
Breaking news: Joe Paterno was tarnished.
He was
died like 6 months after.
Yeah, he did. God, that was a weird time.
But he's like a god in New England right now.
Yeah, it's weird. Yes, it's weird because he's following just people who should not have been offensive coaches. And so while I don't love the O'Brien scheme, at least he's a viable NFL offensive coach, which the people before him are not.
Do you have any like surprise guys in the draft or guys that you're looking out for to maybe break out?
As far as who the Texans picked?
Yeah, because I have one, and I
know who yours is. I would say I'm curious between because I'm not going to say the guy that you're going to say. I think between Dylan Horton and Henry To'oTo'o, I'm just kind of curious. Could they get something out of those guys as far as a solid contribution defensively in like a backup role from one of those two? I'd be curious about that. To'oTo'o was a huge recruit, a big transfer to Alabama. Horton was super productive on a pretty good TCU defense this past year. And one plays a premium position, the other does not. But the other plays a position that's been very annoying on this football team the last 3 years.
God, the Kirko position. He's still here, man.
I know.
You got to think Christian Kirksey gets released because it's the amount of salary that Griffin signed for is like proportional to what you save cutting Kirksey.
Yes, if they cut Kirksey, they save.
Like sometime next week, Christian Kirksey gets cut.
I could see that, or just force them to take a pay cut because you think about it. Like I like these numbers.
Just get him out, please.
Oh yeah, sure. But of his cap hit, $4 million of that is base salary. If they came to him and said, "Hey, take $2 million," like what's he going to do? He's going to go somewhere else and get more. I would have my doubts.
No, but let's just move on.
I'm fine with that too.
Let's just move on.
Fair,
please.
Do you know Ross Blacklock still accounts for some dead money this year?
Yeah, he's on the Vikings.
Yes.
Xavier Hutchinson's my guy out of Iowa State. And I was talking to John Harris at practice today, and I was like, So what happened with this dude? Like, what's
Yes.
going on with Hutchinson? Why the hell did he go when he did? Because the production's crazy. Before he went to Iowa State, he actually had offers from OU, TCU, and Utah. So it's not like he's just like some guy who came out of nowhere. Like some of the marquee programs were looking out for him. And Harris just told me he ran a 4.5 at the combine. And I said, okay, that's it.
Was
he
that
said,
it?
Yeah, he ran a 4.5. I said, okay, because out there, like running drills, like you can tell the coaches get pretty jacked up by him. Like he's running blocking drills. He looks fast. He looks like there's a lot of effort. I think Hutchinson's going to be a player. And I don't know. I'm not sitting here saying that he's going to be like a solid number 2 receiver, but I think he gives you some sort of contribution this year, especially like for a 6th round pick. You just hope he's on the team and then competing for playing time next year, maybe like in a perfect world. I think this dude can ball. It's just not as athletic as you'd like. And that's why you fall in the draft a lot of times.
And when you think about these young players, especially guys who are picked late or undrafted, and trying to project who can actually do anything, you're looking for guys like this where the opportunity is going to be there because there's just such gaping holes at receiver that if he can do anything, he's going to get some playing time. And it's tough if you're not like a highly drafted guy to come in and produce immediately, but he's going to have some opportunities with this receiving core. It's, I would say, the biggest weakness on the team right now. Receiver.
You would say receiver. I would too. I think receiver is a problem.
It's a big. If I could add one player to a position, it would be receiver, especially with Stroud's situation.
I mean, just look at the production. So 3 years at Iowa State, he had 64 for 771 and 4 touchdowns. He had 83 for 987 and 5, and then he had 107 for 1171 and 6.
Yes.
And
with a worse quarterback.
Yeah, 12, 11, 9, 10, 9 yards per catch. I just don't think he's one. He also threw a little touchdown pass in 2021, 49-yard touchdown pass.
I was looking at the Lance Zierlein write up of him at NFL.com, and Lance's basically was a lot of production, but he was targeted a ton. A lot of the catches were short, catch and run, good size, average speed, doesn't have great ball skills, and so he's in a lot of contested catch situations, track record of a late bloomer. It kind of reads like the profile like, hey, this guy produces, but there's nothing really special about him, which is kind of exactly the kind of player that this team needs at this point.
That's why you go 6th round. I mean, no doubt. That's why you go 6th round. So I think he could be a guy who I think he could be a pleasant surprise for the squad. And again, you mentioned the position. I mean, Nico Collins can't stay on the field, and the other guys
coming off
we don't
cancer.
know about him. Yeah, we don't know what's going on with him.
Woods is aging. Noah Brown's more of a blocker.
I feel like I'm liking Noah Brown a little more than a lot of people. I feel like Noah Brown might have a big year.
Oh God, that's a statement that could.
I think he might have 6 touchdowns.
Okay, because he's a big body guy.
No, I mean, he makes plays, man. He makes plays every once in a while, a little bit.
Okay, on a team that had some really good weapons around him. Yes, yes.
6 touchdowns. I don't think that's too much to ask. He might get cut in camp. Who knows? Hutchinson might.
But with this offense, they typically, Landry, they need receivers who can block. The way this offense works,
and he can.
Yes, that's why they signed him.
He can block. I think he's going to be good for this team.
I'm looking forward to just watching the games because you just think about what. I know everybody knows this, but the last 2 years have just been, especially 2021, but God, the last 2 years have been there's so many times I'm sitting there on Sunday being like you take the worst team in the league and then you put a whole bunch of garbage and then that's where we have been. The last 2 years. I
think your problem is more, it's just, even when they win, it didn't really matter.
Yes. Now everything matters. There are no expectations, but now the games will matter.
If has a good game, then it matters. It matters in the long run. So it actually matters. It's not Davis Mills, that was a nice win, but what am I really getting for this? When they beat Jacksonville last year, Cool.
Yes. Yeah. You won because of a couple of penalties, essentially.
And then you're just like,
yes.
Should I be happy? Should I be sad? Are they going to lose? Is it better for them to lose? Like, it actually matters now.
I've seen some people comment, because obviously the Will Anderson trade has been one of the bigger stories across the league the last couple of weeks. But I've seen some people say, and this is right, along the lines of just national people commenting, it felt like the Texans returned to the NFL during the draft. Like they were out for the last 2 years, and they returned to the league based on what they've done.
And that's fair. That's fair.
Yes.
They're back.
Can we relax? I'm looking at some of the comments, like this whole Jerry Rice was a 4.71 and Hopkins ran a 4.57.
I wasn't saying Hutchinson was going to be like a top. I'm just saying a 6th round pick contributing in some way is a win.
Yes. Yeah, he is not going to be DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre
Hopkins ran a 4.57 and was a first round pick.
Look at Brown Chubby Bear right here.
Yes.
4.57.
See, Brown Chubby Bear should know better than this. Yes, I am fine.
Do you ever
with
Brown
the
Chubby Bear, bro?
We had him on a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but I think going to know better than this.
I'm just saying.
Brown Chubby Bear is like every quarterback this offseason.
So he liked all the quarterbacks. Okay.
He liked Lamar Jackson. He liked Anthony Richardson. He liked Bryce Young. He liked C.J. Stroud. He liked
maybe they'll all be good or stay good. That is possible.
BCB's my dog, though. That's my guy right there.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's
the man. He brings it. Smart guy. Crazy guy. Though.
X is going to be our receiver 2 this year. I gotta think about that one.
I would look at Noah, man. Don't sleep on Noah.
Okay.
Sleep on that Buckeye Connect. You on Mad Dog tomorrow?
I am not. I got to talk to you about off the air about that. But I'll be on. I'll be on.
Rid of you or what?
No, they have not gotten rid of me. But in this, they've had some cuts, and so I'm not on as consistently. But it's not a me.
They're not doing the weekend all the time.
Yeah, I did tell you that. Yeah. We talked on the phone about this. Yes, but they're still good with me. Yes. So
okay. What'd you say? What'd you say to piss him off? Did you have a hot take?
I didn't say anything. I'm basically a victim of other people who having like locked in contracts with certain amount of shows that they have to do. People that
Rick Kamla.
I'm gonna tell you who they are.
It's your boy Rick Kamla.
I like Rick a lot. I've actually done 2 shows with Rick.
A lot.
I've done 2 shows with
Rick. I like Rick, but a lot.
I've done 2 shows with Rick.
A lot.
He's a fun person to do a show with. Here's the thing about Rick.
He knows
Landry. You can talk about literally any topic, and that dude will have opinions. It could be anything. He will have an opinion.
He's got takes for days. Appreciate you, man.
He does. I had a good time. Thank you.
The legend, Mike Meltzer, here on In the Locker Room. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. It's been a fun one. It's been a fun week. We had the schedule. Anyone who tells you the schedule doesn't matter, by the way, they're weasels. The way that this is laid out is perfect. The Giants, they got 7 out of 10 road games. You think that didn't matter? Get the hell out of here with that. We got the rookie mini camp, John McClain versus Nick Caserio. We got a lot of fun coming up, man. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Subscribe, like, ride along. Odyssey app, Sports Radio 610. It's all fun. Appreciate everyone for coming through. No matter what happens, we're all in this together. Have a good one.
On YouTube, we got taste for days. Opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up. We number one.